Arsenal are Premier League champions. Let that sink in for a moment. After 22 long years of waiting, of near misses, of heartbreak, of rebuilding, Mikel Arteta's side finally did it. They brought the title back to the Emirates Stadium. And for any other club, that would be the moment to pause, to celebrate, to take a breath. But not Arsenal. Not this version of Arsenal. Because right now, behind the scenes at the Emirates Stadium, something significant is happening. The club is not resting. The club is not satisfied. The club is rebuilding from top to bottom, pushing forward with an ambition that suggests they do not just want to be champions once. They want to build something that lasts. And that ambition is creating some very complicated situations this summer. Situations involving players who cost over £116 million. Situations involving a midfield target who does not want to leave his club on bad terms. Situations involving a winger who barely played in the Champions League final and still cannot be signed at any reasonable price. And situations involving a former Arsenal striker who could now accidentally hand the club a £6 million windfall. This summer has layers. And today, we are going to go through every single one of them. Because if you only follow the headlines, you are missing the full picture. And here on Jessica Arsenal Analyst, the full picture is exactly what we deliver. Let me be clear about what is at stake for Arsenal right now. The situation is this. Arsenal are champions of England. But the Premier League does not stand still. Every rival is already moving. Every competitor is already strengthening. And if Arsenal do not get their business right this summer, the gap they worked so hard to create could close very quickly. The areas Mikel Arteta wants to strengthen are clear. He wants a new central midfielder to partner Declan Rice. He wants attacking reinforcements out wide. He wants cover at fullback. And he wants depth behind William Saliba. Those are 4 significant areas of improvement. And the financial demands of filling those positions are enormous. Now here is where it gets complicated. Arsenal's primary targets in each of those areas are expensive. Some of them are arguably too expensive. And at least one of them may not even be available at any price. The decisions Arsenal make in the next few weeks will define whether they defend their title or whether other clubs catch up and overtake them. The pressure on sporting director Andrea Berta is enormous. And the decisions being made right now, both on the pitch and behind the scenes, will shape this club for the next several years. If you want this level of analysis on every single Arsenal story this summer, please hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we go deeper than the headlines. Every week, we give you the full picture. And this summer is shaping up to be one of the most important transfer windows in Arsenal's recent history. You do not want to miss a single update. Now let us get into it. The Barcola situation and why Arsenal must walk away. Let us start with the story that has dominated Arsenal discussions over the last 24 hours. Bradley Barcola. 23 years old, Paris Saint-Germain winger, one of the most exciting young wide players in European football, and someone Arsenal simply cannot sign this summer. The situation is now very clear. Paris Saint-Germain do not want to sell Bradley Barcola. That is the starting point. That is the foundation of everything else that follows in this story. It is not a negotiation tactic. It is not a soft no that will eventually become a yes if the right offer arrives. The French champions have made their position clear. Barcola is not for sale. But beyond that fundamental reality, there is also the question of price. Even if PSG were willing to sell, the fee they would demand is £116 million. And that figure does not represent a firm asking price. The situation is that the actual cost would be well in excess of that number. Over £116 million is described as the floor, not the ceiling. Now let us put that into perspective. That figure is higher than what Manchester City are paying for Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson, a young English midfielder who has shown genuine Premier League quality. The fact that Barcola's price tag exceeds that level tells you everything you need to know about how Paris Saint-Germain value their winger. And here is the critical analytical point. Is Barcola worth that kind of money? The evidence suggests he is not, at least not yet. Last season in the Champions League, Bradley Barcola played 16 games for Paris Saint-Germain. In those 16 games, he scored just twice. 2 goals in 16 Champions League appearances. For a winger carrying a price tag of over £116 million, that is a deeply underwhelming return. And then there is the Champions League final itself. Arsenal faced PSG in that final, and Barcola was on the pitch. In that biggest of moments, he missed 2 clear chances to win the game during normal time. 2 big opportunities, both wasted. That is not the profile of a player who justifies over £116 million. That is the profile of a talented but raw young player who still has significant development ahead of him. The situation is that Barcola is undeniably gifted. Nobody is disputing that. But talent and reliability are 2 different things. And at over £116 million, Arsenal would not be buying proven reliability. They would be buying potential. And at this stage of Mikel Arteta's project, Arsenal cannot afford to gamble that kind of money on potential. There is another dimension to this story that also matters. Paris Saint-Germain have already brought in Magnus Akliouche and Yan Diomande this summer. Those arrivals should in theory create space in their attacking department. But the club insists that those signings will not change their position on Barcola. He remains in their plans. He remains highly valued in the French capital. And despite the limited minutes he experienced last season, they are not prepared to let him go. The reality for Arsenal is simple. Walk away. Redirect those resources. There are better value targets available. And speaking of better value targets, let us move to the next chapter. Morgan Rogers and the complicated reality of signing him. Morgan Rogers has been on Arsenal's radar for some time now. The Aston Villa and England forward has developed into one of the most exciting young attacking players in the Premier League. His ability to operate across the front line, his directness, his work rate and his output at club level have made him one of the most sought-after players in English football. The situation is that Arsenal want him. That is confirmed. He is on their list of attacking targets alongside Christos Tzolis and the now closed Barcola pursuit. But here is where it gets complicated. The situation with Rogers is that his valuation has been significantly impacted by what is happening elsewhere in the transfer market. Aston Villa are now using Manchester City's agreed fee for Elliot Anderson as a reference point. That fee is £116 million. And Villa are pointing to that figure when discussing Rogers. That is significant, because it means Arsenal are not just negotiating with Aston Villa. They are effectively negotiating against a market benchmark that has been set by one of the biggest clubs in world football, paying a premium for an English talent. The situation is that Rogers could cost Arsenal in the region of £100 million. That is an enormous fee. And while Rogers has shown genuine quality in the Premier League, that kind of price tag creates a very real question about value and priority. What we know is this: Arsenal need attacking quality. They want Rogers, but Aston Villa are not in any rush to sell, and they now have a very convenient market figure to point at when those conversations become difficult. This is the challenge Andrea Berta faces. He is trying to bring in multiple reinforcements across multiple positions during a transfer window where English talent in particular is becoming increasingly expensive. And every time a major deal is agreed elsewhere in the Premier League, it raises the floor for the players Arsenal are chasing. Bruno Guimaraes and the midfield solution Arsenal are pursuing. Now let us talk about the player Arsenal believe could solve their biggest tactical need: Bruno Guimaraes, Brazilian international, Newcastle United captain. And in the view of many analysts across European football, one of the best central midfielders currently playing in the Premier League. The situation is that Arsenal want him. They want him badly. And unlike the Barcola situation, this one carries genuine hope. Here is what we know. Arsenal believe that £65 million will be enough to sign Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle United this summer. That is their internal assessment. They have looked at his contract situation, his age, and his value in the current market, and they have arrived at that figure as what they consider a fair and achievable fee. Inside the club, there is even a sense that anything over £50 million should be considered a strong offer, given the specific circumstances surrounding Bruno. And what are those circumstances? Bruno Guimaraes turns 29 in November. He has 2 years remaining on his current contract at Newcastle. In football, those two factors combined create a very specific dynamic. A player entering the final 2 years of a deal, in his late 20s, heading toward his 30s, represents a window for clubs to sell and recoup significant value. If Newcastle hold on and he runs his contract down, they risk losing him for a much smaller fee, or potentially for free. That is the reality, and Arsenal know it. Their confidence in the £65 million figure comes from that understanding. Now, there is one major complication in this transfer. Arsenal already made an initial bid of £55 million. Newcastle rejected it. That rejection makes clear that while the Magpies might be open to selling eventually, they are not going to make this easy. They want more, and from their perspective, that is understandable. Because Bruno Guimaraes is not just a player at Newcastle United, he is the captain. He is the heartbeat of Eddie Howe's team. He is the player around whom their entire midfield system is built. Losing him would not just leave a gap in their squad, it would leave a gap in their identity. But there is something else that makes this situation even more nuanced. Bruno Guimaraes does not want to leave Newcastle on bad terms. That detail matters enormously. It tells you that he cares about the club, about the supporters, and about the legacy he is building on Tyneside. He is not the type of player who will hand in a transfer request, create a public drama, and force his way out at any cost. That means if this transfer is going to happen, it will need to be handled carefully. Arsenal will need to raise their offer above that initial £55 million figure. Bruno may need to indicate to Newcastle that he is open to moving. And Newcastle will need to decide whether the right financial offer, combined with Bruno's own desires, represents a situation they should accept. The situation is delicate, but it is not impossible. And from a purely analytical standpoint, Bruno Guimaraes would be a genuinely outstanding addition to this Arsenal midfield. The profile of what he offers, the experience, the quality, the leadership, the ability to dominate in central areas at the highest level, makes him arguably the ideal partner for Declan Rice. Arsenal are right to pursue this. They are right to be willing to pay in the region of £65 million. The question is whether Newcastle can be persuaded. The Balogun windfall and how it could fund Arsenal's business. Now we come to one of the more intriguing subplots of Arsenal's summer. Folarin Balogun, former Arsenal Academy graduate, sold to AS Monaco in the summer of 2023 for £34.6 million. At the time, the decision to sell him was questioned by some supporters. A young English striker with genuine quality, developed through the Arsenal system, leaving for French football. Was it the right call? The situation now is that the answer to that question has become much more interesting. Balogun has continued to impress at Monaco. His form in League One has been outstanding. And his performances at the current World Cup have elevated him to a different level of attention altogether. He has scored 2 goals in his first 3 matches for the United States at the tournament, helping his country secure their place in the round of 32. Those are significant numbers in a significant competition. And now Chelsea are targeting him as one of Xabi Alonso's first signings as their new manager. Monaco have set their valuation at £47 million, a figure informed by his exceptional club form and his World Cup performances. Chelsea see him as a priority after moving on Nicholas Jackson and Liam Delap, leaving them needing genuine striking reinforcement. Now here is where Arsenal come back into the picture in a very direct way. When Arsenal sold Balogun to Monaco 3 years ago, they negotiated a sell-on clause as part of that deal. Arsenal are entitled to 12.5% of any future transfer fee generated by Balogun's next move. 12.5% of £47 million. That amounts to approximately £6 million coming directly back to Arsenal. Now, £6 million in the context of transfer fees of £65 million and £100 million might seem modest. But in the world of football finance, every contribution matters. That £6 million could represent the difference between Arsenal meeting a valuation or falling short. It could provide flexibility in negotiations. It could fund part of a smaller deal running alongside the bigger moves. The situation is that this windfall is not going to transform Arsenal's transfer budget on its own. But it is a meaningful addition. And it is a reminder that smart contract negotiation, the kind that includes sell-on clauses and performance bonuses, can deliver real financial value years after the original deal was completed. Arsenal's business in 2023 looks smarter today than it might have seemed at the time, the rebuild behind the scenes. Now let us zoom out from the individual transfer stories and look at something equally important. What Arsenal are doing behind the scenes this summer is as significant as anything happening on the transfer pitch. The medical department is being completely overhauled. Arnaldo Abrantes is arriving from Aston Villa as the new head of medicine, replacing outgoing chief Zafar Iqbal. Rehabilitation specialist Eneko Angelo is joining from Real Betis, and lead performance coach Sam Wilson, after 12 years at the club, is departing. That is a comprehensive reset of Arsenal's medical and performance structure. And the reason behind it is clear. Injuries have plagued Arsenal for the last 2 seasons. Games lost, momentum disrupted, squad depth tested beyond its limits. The club has clearly identified this as a structural problem, not just bad luck, and they are responding with a fundamental change in personnel and approach. The football department is also evolving significantly. Andrea Berta, who arrived as sporting director, has already appointed Maurizio Micheli, the former Napoli head of scouting, to strengthen the recruitment operation. And now the situation is that Berta wants to go further. He is looking to bring in Javier Alonso, currently the sporting director at Granada, to expand that team even further. The connection here is important. Berta and Javier Alonso worked together at Atletico Madrid between 2016 and 2021. Berta trusts the people he has worked closely with. That is the logic behind bringing in Micheli from Napoli, and it is the same logic behind pursuing Alonso from Granada. This is not random hiring. This is a deliberate strategy of building a recruitment and sporting structure populated by people Berta has personally worked alongside, tested, and trusts at the highest level. Granada, for their part, hope to keep Alonso. The dialogue is ongoing, nothing is confirmed, but the direction of travel is clear. Arsenal want him, and Berta is making his case. At the same time, Arteta is pursuing defensive reinforcements. The situation is that a new fullback is wanted, and there is also interest in cover for William Saliba, recognising how crucial that defensive foundation has been to everything Arsenal have built. The Tonali complication and what it means for Arsenal. One more thread in this complex transfer story deserves attention. Sandro Tonali was a name on Arsenal's midfield shortlist. The Italian was considered a potential option as Arteta looked to strengthen in central areas. The situation is that a deal for Tonali now appears too expensive for Arsenal. The numbers simply do not work in the way they would need to, and according to the latest information, Tottenham Hotspur may be the club that ultimately moves to sign him. That is a significant development, not just because it removes a potential option from Arsenal's list, but because it has sharpened the focus on Bruno Guimaraes as the primary midfield target. If Tonali goes to Spurs, Arsenal will feel that urgency even more clearly. Getting the right midfielder into this squad is not just about quality. It is about not allowing a direct rival to strengthen in the same area while you stand still. That competitive pressure is real. And it is another reason why the Bruno Guimaraes pursuit matters so much in the coming weeks. Alex Scott and the continuing fullback challenge. While the midfield and attacking stories dominate the headlines, there is another position where Arsenal are actively working and running into resistance. Alex Scott at Bournemouth has been identified as a target for Arsenal's fullback reinforcement plans. The young English talent has impressed significantly in the Premier League and fits the profile of player Arsenal want to bring into the squad. But the situation is the same one Arsenal are encountering across multiple positions this summer. The selling club is standing firm. Bournemouth are not budging. They want to keep Alex Scott. They have no financial pressure to sell, and they are making their position clear in negotiations. This is a recurring theme in Arsenal's summer. The players they want are wanted by the clubs that have them. And in a market where English talent commands premium valuations, every negotiation is difficult. Berta has, as the situation suggests, his work cut out. Closing analysis. So let us bring all of this together. Arsenal this summer are operating on multiple fronts simultaneously. They are rebuilding their medical department with fresh personnel and fresh ideas. They are expanding their recruitment structure with trusted allies in key roles. They are pursuing a midfield solution in Bruno Guimaraes that could genuinely transform their engine room. They are navigating a complicated attacking market where prices are inflated and availability is limited. And they are doing all of this while managing the financial reality of what it costs to compete at the very highest level. The situation is that this is not a club that has won the title and decided to stand still. This is a club that has won the title and immediately identified the next stage of the journey. That mentality, that relentless forward thinking, is what Arteta has built into the culture of this football club. There are real challenges ahead. Barcola is off the table and too expensive even if he were not. Rodgers could cost close to £100 million in a market that keeps pushing prices higher. Bruno Guimaraes is genuinely achievable but will require Arsenal to go beyond their rejected £55 million bid. And Alex Scott at Bournemouth represents yet another wall that Berta must find a way through. But the direction is clear. The ambition is real. And the people making decisions at Arsenal are approaching this summer with the intelligence and structure that give genuine reason for confidence. The £6 million Balogun windfall will help. The sell-on clause was smart business 3 years ago and proves its value now. Every pound matters when you are trying to fund multiple deals across multiple positions in one transfer window. And behind all of the player business, the structural rebuild of the medical and scouting department signals something important. Arsenal are not just trying to be the best team in England right now. They are trying to build the infrastructure that keeps them at the top for years to come. That is the full picture. That is what is really happening at Arsenal this summer. And here on Jessica Arsenal Analyst, this is exactly the kind of analysis you get every single time. If this breakdown added value to your understanding of where Arsenal are right now, please hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling me which of these stories you think matters most. Is it the Bruno Guimaraes pursuit? Is it the complications around Morgan Rodgers? Or is it the behind-the-scenes rebuild that you think will define Arsenal's next chapter? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. This has been Jessica Arsenal Analyst. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I will see you in the next one.